What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I am your temporary host. Had to work a little Loki
I
pun in
see
there.
what you did there. That was nice.
I'm your temporary host for this week, Adam Blevins, senior editor here at the Agents of Fandom. Your usual host, TJ Zawarich, is at New York Comic Con with a bunch of fellow agents. They're having a great time, but the show still goes on. We still have a whole lot of things to talk about. Got a nice little one-on-one conversation slated for you guys here today with a whole lot of stuff on the agenda. Joining me today, my good friend, my mentor. We're getting him. Somebody give me a drum roll or something. Garrett Blaney, director of content and editorial. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm happy to be joining you here, holding down the fort while everyone pumps out the awesome content and hangs out, meets each other for the first time, all of the above at New York Comic Con. So glad that they can have that opportunity. I'm sad that you're not able to be there with them, but happy that we can, instead of that, have this nice conversation about Loki. And it's kind of nice because takes us back to kind of like the good old days of Agents of Fandom, where TJ and I only a couple times have had just like some one-on-one conversations. So I'm excited to get back to the personalness of it, and just flesh some stuff out with you, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is a great, after not being able to make it to New York, I think this is probably the best consolation prize that I could have asked for. But yeah, everybody, if any of our listeners and every fellow agents and everybody that are listening, we hope you guys are having a great time. Everybody's staying safe. It looks like everybody's having a great time and stuff. I believe the Ewan McGregor and David Tennant panels have already been going on. I think you guys have Chris Evans and all kinds of exciting stuff coming up. So it's good to see everybody having a good time there. But we have a whole list of things to talk about today. We're going to get into some Loki a little bit later. We'll hit you guys with a spoiler warning before we get into that. But first off, if you're watching on YouTube, watching the live show after the fact on YouTube, make sure to give us a little thumbs up, give us a like, and then give us the subscribe. There we go. My brain was going trying to
That's
think,
the word.
right there. Hit us with a like and subscribe. Hit those notification bells to stay up to date on everything. And if you're listening in podcast form, make sure to give us a 5 stars. We really, really appreciate it. First up on the agenda
comments
today.
too. We need some more. We need some more comments, some more ratings down in the podcast realm. So if you haven't given us a 5-star rating, go ahead and give us a review there as well, because we're lacking there.
Absolutely, yeah. I could not have said that any better myself. So first up on the agenda, earlier this week, for those of you that don't know, most of our listeners, most people listening to this have probably already heard this, but for those of you that don't know, I believe it was Wednesday afternoon, a big report from Boris Kidd of The Hollywood Reporter came out and said the headline of it was essentially that Daredevil was undergoing this huge reboot, and they've already fired the writers, the directors, and everything. And they're going to be keeping a little bit of it, like they're hanging on to, I think they said a few scenes and a few episodes, but by and large, they're looking to take the show in a completely different direction. And then on top of that, there was a whole list of things that they're going to be, Marvel in particular, is going to be doing differently in terms of television. They're no longer going to be looking to produce these as one big movie, kind of chopped up into 5 or 6 pieces, and actually bring in people qualified to produce good television shows. I think this is something that a lot of people were really, really excited to hear, even though this will probably mean for something like Daredevil and inevitable delays in the wings. And they didn't officially announce that within the article. But given that the show, I think, is slated for either a late 2024 or early 2025 release right now, I believe that
I can't remember after the delay, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I'll throw it to you, or ain't nobody else to throw it to, so I don't know who else I would have been throwing it to. But this is a little bit of a 2-parter for you. So when you first saw this news, what was your reaction to like the Daredevil project in particular, like firing the writers and the writers and the directors? Obviously, that's a really, really big deal. And then as you read through the article and kind of listened to the news and stuff, like everything that's going to be going on with the future of Marvel TV in general, what did you think about
that? Well, first off, I think there are some people that are staying on. So I don't think everybody got fired. Some people are staying on as showrunners, I believe, which is cool. I haven't personally seen the leaks or heard what the leaks are, but I've heard that whatever was going on with Daredevil, the plot leaked and was horrendous. And people have heard that and have agreed. And so when that got wind, they were like, we got to scrap this. And ultimately, I think it's a good thing if the product is not good. I will always, and it goes back to the video game conversations that we've had so many times before. I will take delays. I will wait longer if it means what I'm getting is going to be of better quality. 100% of the time, I'll do that.
Always.
So in that case, I think it's a great thing. But the main thing that came to my mind was basically, what the fuck? It is honestly pretty mind-blowing to hear how, like, what the processes were behind the scenes for how these shows were run.
Right.
They are wildly different than how any other shows are run, and are very much the reason for why the quality of the shows has been criticized. And that's, to break it down for people that don't know, is that they were run without showrunners. The executive producers just had like direct oversight onto everybody and would call the shots, and then any changes they would do in post-production, like the movies. So it was very much a movie to TV plan, that they took the same movie plan and shifted it to TV and used the same funnel of people that had been like preparing in this movie lane for a long time. And obviously, especially with Secret Invasion, that quality is very obvious. The lack of the drop in quality is obvious. And it's been criticized for, a good majority of the length of the release of the Disney Plus shows. So ultimately, it's a great thing. But the biggest thing is, like, why the hell was it like this? And you could say a lot of things, but it probably ultimately boils down to Disney leadership and wanting to like string out the Marvel machine and continue to essentially print money with this franchise. Right. And upping it to, like, there was a point in time, when they said we're gonna have 3 movies a year or whatever, and we were all like, whoa, and it was it was great, well, no, at the time it was awesome, it was
That's
cool.
True, yeah.
and then it wasn't until now when we're really like, okay, pump the brakes. Now that we're doing 3 movies a year and 2, 3, 4 shows, it's now it's a problem. And it's been an issue with the VFX teams, obviously, that's so much so that they've had to unionize, which was a historic thing and an amazing thing for them. But it's caused all these problems in the industry. So to kind of peel back the layers of that and to see what it really was like is mind-boggling a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially in the sense of Daredevil, it seems like there's not as much to talk about with Daredevil in particular, because it's kind of like they just realized, hey, we've got a shit product here and we're going to kind of take this in a new direction. So we don't have a shit product when it's time for this to release. But I'm with you. Reading through that, it was really shocking to see, like, it's just a poor case of mismanagement, thinking they could not even, I had to worry about actually hiring people that are actually qualified to make TV. They're just like, we've got all these people that can make movies. Surely they can make TV too. Like, they've been making movies for us that we'll just have them make TV too. And it's like, these mediums are completely different. So it's not that's not the kind of thing that works at all. And like you said, everybody's been complaining about this for a long time. It's really obvious. Even though the shows, and now we'd like to, to cap this, I was saying, like, the shows, we're not saying every one of the shows that have released have just been shit.
A lot of I've actually liked the majority of them, to be honest with you. Right. The only one I can say I didn't like is Secret Invasion.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly. And even, like, I mean, no enjoyment for me personally coming out of Secret Invasion, but even the shows that I've like had my qualms with the structure or things like that, like, I still enjoyed all of them by and large, but they just didn't feel like TV shows. They just felt like really, really long movies chopped up into, like, taking the acts 1 and 2 and chopping them in half, acts 2, like all this kind of stuff. So,
yeah, it causes all these weird issues like pacing and like plot development, and we're stopping on these weird cliffhangers because we have to end on something that keeps the interest for a week, and it fucks everything up.
Yeah, and it'll be great too, I think, because I saw part of that too was that they're going to be focusing on like longer term, multi-season storytelling, which that's how TV is supposed to be. It's not I know like limited series and things like that are a thing. Like nobody's saying that every single TV show has to be 5 or 6 seasons, but still, there's no reason that many of these shows, especially shows like She-Hulk and things like that, could not be 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons like coming out every year or two. Now we don't want to push the VFX team too far, but ultimately, I think this will, in the long run, this will absolutely be a great change for them. And I think once we get past, a few of the shows that have come out, it looks like Ironheart's probably going to be getting a big adjustment too, and maybe Agatha and some things like that. But once we get, I think 2 to 3 years in advance, I think we're going to really start to see some of the effects of these changes that we just learned about this week. And I don't know, I think that's going to be great for Marvel TV. But
before we move on, though, I think it's important to note that the changes are not necessarily because they realized Daredevil sucked,
right,
which we both kind of alluded to at different points. What really is the driving factor behind these things is that the Writers Guild got a new deal, and it mandates a certain amount of like showrunners on each show, and it's like I don't want to take anything away from like the fact that a lot of this stems from the WGA deal and how good of a job they did in getting that deal. And it was a mixture of like, oh, this product isn't good. And also like, we are now forced to change some of the things that we were doing because of new contract rules. So I don't want to like dismiss anything that the WGA did. So I think we have to mention that like, it wasn't just Marvel like, oh no, this actually could suck. Like that was probably definitely a part of it, but definitely some of it is procedural. Have to change things. So congrats to the WGA members and the arbitrators, litigators, whatever the hell you want to call them, for hammering out such an awesome deal that allowed us to realize all the cracks in this, in this machine.
Right. Oh yeah, very well put. We're super, super happy for all the WGA members and everybody that's they can finally put an end to all that, get back to work and stuff. But now they got to move on to the actors. And unfortunately, it looks like they're going to be at a bit of a stalemate because the studios just insist on being vile people and using AI and all this.
Have you seen those videos going around of that Disney show where the background actors are like lifeless,
just
like
lifeless? Yeah.
So terrifying. And like, were they just like, all right, we're just gonna test this out, see if people notice? Because like, there was no way we weren't gonna notice that. It is so unhuman. Like, oh,
if that's the kind of thing they're gonna try to get away with, I mean, I don't know. The actors are never gonna they're just never gonna go for that. Nobody with any kind of with an ounce of humanity is gonna go for anything like that because that's just like, it's cheap, it's cutting corners. And I saw somebody else made a great point on Twitter too. They were like, so many actors get these great breakouts from like these really tiny roles like that they're now trying to phase out to AI. So like, not only are you cutting out jobs right now, but you're also like putting a huge bottleneck on jobs that people could be getting in the future. Yeah. So I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating. And I hope, the studios at a certain point have to realize like they are absolutely nothing. They finally realize they're nothing without the writers, and just equally they're nothing without the actors, the people on the screen unless they just plan on 100% AI actors. Like, I don't know what their plan is here to just not go along with anything. The writers are asking for 2% everything, which is just like such a ridiculously small amount, like a drop in the bucket compared to what they make. It's infuriating to see them consistently pushing back on it.
Did you, while we're ragging on the studios here, did you happen to catch a news article that had said the studios are represented by like the AMPTP, right? It's the Alliance of Motion and Television Producers, whatever it is. The producers lobbied. They wrote a letter to like the leadership of the AMPTP, and they said, "Drop the P. We don't want to be involved. We don't want to be involved in this anymore." So now the producers are not going to be involved in the studios, and they're going to be their own thing. And that's like, you fucked up when like the part of like, it's like they're seceding from them. It's like a civil war.
That's like, I don't know who all they have on their side left. I just imagine is this like small conference room full of just asshole like Bob Iger and Zaslav.
They're
just
all
sitting there.
zooming from their yachts. Like, God damn it, these fucking peasants.
They're talking to people that are like out there on the picket line with a sandwich and a bottle of water, and they're like on their yachts and in their limos and doing all this stuff. Like, how dare them ask for more money? The fucking gall. Like it's
they're chatting with each other on the phones. Like, oh, what'd you hear? I couldn't hear you over the sound of my helicopter's propellers. As I'm flying from one yacht in the Pacific Ocean to my yacht in the Atlantic Ocean. I guess you wouldn't use a helicopter for that, but whatever. The point
they probably would. They probably would. As dumb as they are, that's probably exactly what they're doing because they just have no logic.
They'd use the private jet because it was much more damaging to the environment.
Oh man, I was not prepared for us to go on a 10-minute tangent, just completely ragging on the studios. But frankly, there's no better way to start the show. I don't think that was
absolutely worth.
Right. So with all of that under our belt, as we kind of let's navigate back a little bit. Let's get this thing back on track. We're getting ready to dive into Loki episode 2. Spoiler warning in advance for everybody. We are getting ready to talk about Loki, so there's going to be Loki spoilers, not just from this episode, but probably from the previous episode, the entire first season of Loki, and the larger MCU as a whole. So you've been warned. There's no telling what all we're going to talk about. But
if you haven't watched anything of the MCU and you came here for our Loki season 2 episode 2 discussion, then I don't know what to tell you.
But people will get mad about anything these days. So I'm trying to cover all of our bases. I'm just trying to get out ahead of any kind of potential problems. But first off, I would love to know what your thoughts are on the episode, because I personally have really enjoyed this episode. I thought the first episode 2 did a great job, like establishing the stakes, and then we build right into that in episode 2, and the tension, the stakes, and everything is all right there. They didn't lower it or raise anything back down, or lower anything back down. Raising back down, that's a bad structure right there. But anyways, what did you think of this second episode?
Well, first, I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the first episode.
That's right.
It's okay. We're missing our usual, teacher, our maestro.
I'm 12% as good as he is. Yeah.
Yeah, you're at least 14. Give yourself some credit. No, I think the first episode started off with a bang. I was just pretty much enthralled the entire way through. Kiwi Kwan is just fantastic as OB. I'm just glued to the screen anytime he's on it. It feels like this role was written specifically with him in mind, with just how exceptional he delivers everything. The scene when they're like in the past and the present at the same time is just like, it's just peak. The writing is just phenomenal. Everything is just great. So I was thrilled. And Loki season 1 has always been very high on my list of MCU shows at or near the top, because I'm so ADHD with my rankings that it kind of just depends on when you ask me, but it's always ever present at like 1 or 2 spot. So I was thrilled that the first episode kind of came back on that same level. And then with episode 2, I felt it continued that, certainly at the very beginning, with the kind of like horror stuff of them chasing him and the shadow Lokis growing the horns. Like I really loved that. And then I think it kind of fell a little bit flatter to me towards the end of the episode. I think the first half of the episode was really good. And the second half was good, but not as good, in my opinion. It felt like some more setup for future stuff, which is fair. But it just wasn't the same. It wasn't as high as the first episode to me. Still great though. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I agree too. I think it's a good point that, it's a little bit of a stark contrast, because we come out of this first episode where it's like just the entire time it's like a shot of adrenaline into the arm. They're running and they're traveling through time and doing all this crazy stuff. And then, the end of episode 1, we get a fix to the time. What's it called? The time hopping. There we go. And we get a fix to the time hopping.
Time slipping.
So now we're, yeah. And it's like the first little bit, 15 or 20 minutes or so of the episode are still that same kind of fast pace, and then it slows down a little bit when we get to Sylvie and we're doing all this other stuff. But within this first 20 minutes, I thought they did a great job kind of navigating this interrogation scene and giving us a look at this very kind of sinister version of Loki, like between the capturing of X5 in 1977 in London, I believe it was in the very beginning, bringing him all the way back to the TVA and putting him in that frankly really really terrifying little box thing. Like that's not anything that I kind of would have thought of as like a torture device, but it looks absolutely terrifying to be caught up in one of those things. But
And it makes sense with the TVA's like technology too.
right,
It kind of like looks like their doorway, but it's just like if it would just like close
right.
onto you. So it's I love it. It fits perfectly with their vibe.
Yeah, I agree. And it was funny because when I'm watching this, I'm thinking about like obviously Loki season 1 picks up in this kind of alternate timeline where right after the events of the Avengers, and then like we know, and I think near the end of the first season, Loki gets not enchanted by Sylvie, but in the TVA he runs through all of his entire memories, so he kind of picks up on everything that's happened to him. So in a sense, he's still the same character that we've been following, but like I know time works differently in the TVA. This really I don't think is that far removed from the Loki that killed 80 people in 2 days in the Avengers. So it's like this isn't the kind of thing that's been 15 years for him since that. I don't think it's been any more than like a few weeks, really. I mean, the first season of Loki moves right along, and this second season picks right up after that. So it's like it was really, really good to get to see that villainous version, that more sinister version of him. What did you think about that? The way they kind of brought him back to his roots a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, that's everybody. That's how everybody fell in love with Tom Hiddleston's Loki, right? As him being this little mischievous trickster fuck,
Right.
and that like it kind of comes out a little bit, um, and even like some more sinister sides, and I love that. It's kind of up until I think after like the interrogation scene was kind of where it started to fall off for me, but up until like all this X5 stuff, I was like pretty locked in, and all the interrogation stuff to see him kind of ramp up at the beginning and then Mobius is like, no, hold back. And then Mobius ramps up, and then they kind of form this plan and come back in, and they're acting it out like because he's not the sinister guy, but he's that's this plan that they've concocted. So it's great. And then to your point, like yes, this is a Loki who's maybe a couple weeks removed from the uh, the Battle of New York and the Avengers, yet it's almost the same Loki, bro, probably farther along in character development of the Loki that we have in Avengers Infinity War.
Right.
At the very end of Ragnarok, like the very end times of Loki when he's willing to like die for the greater good, he's kind of he's overgone this moral growth, this compass he's grown, which obviously has been like Loki's character arc has been one of the most enjoyable to see throughout the entire MCU.
Oh yeah.
But yet we get to see it kind of reset in this. That's why it's so fun, right? Because and then by the end of the first season of Loki, he's kind of, I would say, at the same place that he was at the end of Ragnarok or in Avengers Infinity War. He's grown that morality. He's thinking like, oh no, what if we did kill the one thing that was holding everything together? And he is a good guy now. Like there is no getting around it. Like he's a good guy now. So despite that, we still get to see the trickster come out, and that's super fun to me. So that's one of the best parts of this episode.
Oh yeah, and like you said, the way they did it too is interesting. With like, it's not really a regression of his character because it's like it's not even actually real. This little buddy cop, this good cop, bad cop routine they're kind of going through. Which I personally, the first time I watched this episode, I bought it. Like when Loki walked up and closed the door, like, and I'm like, wait, is he actually? Are we doing this right now? Is he getting ready to do it? And then Mobius is banging on the door, and I'm like we've seen that a whole bunch of times before. One guy kind of steers away from the plan and does.
But you
this.
still question it. Your brain's
Right.
like, but what if?
Right.
What
I'm
if?
like, wait, is this actually
he's
going on? Like,
he's a trickster.
X5 is getting to him. Right. X5
Yeah.
was really doing a great job of getting to both of them, I thought, which like that's played into why it was so believable in that scene. It's like, and he doesn't even raise his voice or anything, but he takes some real shots at Loki about being a villain and stuff. But
talking about his mom.
right, it's like he was just there was nothing held back right there. But One thing too that I noticed, and people all over the internet, everybody, Marvel shows, movies, everything, even trailers, are something that are going to be combed apart inch by inch, frame by frame, to check over Easter eggs and references or anything like that. That's how it's been since the beginning, and that's how it's going to be as long as these movies and shows are around. Everybody on the internet, I did not catch either one of these references in my first watching. I'm not really that good at catching those like real quick 1 second things, especially things that aren't spoken. I'm good at picking up on things with that are spoken, but anything that's like a quick passing, like a Kingo poster, I am not really that good at picking up on. So when I saw that, I was doing the Leo point meme, like, oh shit, I know that guy. And in this episode too, we get a reference to the X-Men, or at least a potential reference to the X-Men, with the door opening, which looks remarkably similar to the door into
Like
Cerebro.
Cerebro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, opening up, and that feels almost too similar to be coincidence. Especially even people have been putting side by side shots up with the way those are like shot and filmed, and they even like the way the camera kind of pulls out as the door splits apart. I don't know, that definitely doesn't seem like complete coincidence. So first off, what do you think about the Kingo? This is like kind of a loaded question I've got for you here, though. So for the Kingo reference kind of thing, are these things satisfactory to you to provide like a level of connectivity? One of the big complaints about the MCU now is like, oh, there's not enough connectivity anymore like they used to have back in phases 1 through 3. But then they sprinkle things like this in, and then you see a lot of people saying, well, no, see, it's still connected. We've got like a reference to the Eternals and Loki. Are these kinds of things, like a little poster like this, like satisfactory for you as like a connectivity device?
That's a good question. I appreciate that question. Um, yes, in a sense, but I'll say at this point, it is like the bare minimum. I feel like you have to have you. There's we have so many years, so many hours worth of storytelling here that like you if you're not including something in the background of like I don't know a lot of shots, then like I feel like you're missing a lot of opportunities, And it doesn't have to be significant, but just like a painting or poster of Kingo on the wall is like literally like scraping the bottom of the barrel of easy things that you could think of to do. And
Right.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he's been referenced before, and he's the only Eternal that's been referenced to.
I think so. Yeah, because I believe he was referenced in Miss Marvel, right? I believe that was the
Yes,
last time it came. Yeah.
yeah. But like okay,
No
we
other.
gotta get another reference. Like at this point, like a double Kingo, it's like a little bit lazy, It's like a little bit
Right.
that's redundant. I feel, but there's a lot of cool stuff you could do. But yeah, we're getting posters of Kingo, but yet we don't know like what this giant Eternal sticking out of the ocean means. And that like to be fair to like I know people complain about that. It doesn't really bother me, to be honest, like
Right.
personally. But if I'm gonna be realistic, like, yeah, it's we could have a news program happening in the background somewhere that like mentions it. Like, there's so many things you could do at this point to connect in like little ways that like it's the bare minimum to me. But that's a good question. I think we should always be not we, but like Marvel should always be trying to stick little things in that like for example, James Gunn has this fucking Easter egg in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie that we've all been searching for, or like we follow people who have been searching for. Maybe not have done the actual digging ourselves, but like we've all followed this story for a long time. We know if you're a Marvel fan, you know the lore behind the Easter egg, but like it's probably something really small and dumb, but like it's been like so much searching and hours of manpower behind finding this and code breaking and cracking and all this stuff. And like every time James Gunn is like, nope. But like here we are, and we have just like this little poster of Kingo. I don't want to seem like I'm complaining because I think it's nice that we have it. It just is, in my opinion, the bare minimum.
I agree. Why not? Like, I mean, I'll just say it. I'll be the one to say it. Why not bring in Camille and have him shoot some scenes? Like shoot a scene in the background, just even if it's like one quick thing. Now I know like scheduling in Hollywood is a big deal, and the MCU is much bigger than it was in phases 1 through 3. They had like a pool of 5 to 6 people to pull from, and now they have what 25, 35, 40 people to pull from. But it's like, would it have been that hard to bring? Like we see all the time, like and people bring in for cameos and things like that. They could have shot something like that. And I'm with you. I'm not complaining. It was cool to see, but it's one of those things like it's the bare minimum. And I'm like, would it have taken any longer than a day or 2 days to bring him in and
Here's
shoot
the
like
thing.
a scene or something like that? I don't
It's
know.
terribly hard when you have people who are used to scheduling movies that
That's
are now
true.
scheduling
Yeah.
TV shows. It's a bunch of different scheduling timetables. And they weren't able to work out the math, have it work. But now that we have changed the structure and the processes, we'll be able to get those tiny cameos. Because, like, here's the thing. We saw fucking Nick Fury in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like multiple times. So there's no excuse.
Right, and yeah, it's frustrating. It's because it's like you said, it's the bare minimum, and I keep seeing these things, and I'm like, yes, like this is a taste, but it almost feels lazy because it's like there's so much more. You guys have such a deep well to dig into. Like, why are you just giving us these tiny little things here and there? But it is better than them giving us nothing. I will say that. Now, as far as we kind of just buried the X-Men thing right there, but I do want to ask you about that because there's all these rumors and speculation that Deadpool is going. And at this point, I believe it is nothing but actual rumors. I don't think there's been any official reporting. Although I think there's been some reporting that some characters in Deadpool are going to be TVA characters. I believe Matthew McFadden is going to be playing a TVA agent. At least that was reported. But there's nothing inside. Like Kevin Feige hasn't mentioned it. Nobody. It's all reporting and rumors right now. Nobody. We don't know anything. No official plot synopsis or anything. Do you think like Deadpool obviously has his ties to the X-Men and the mutants and everything like that? Is this going to be any kind? Will the TVA and the X Mansion or whatever it's going to be called, like, will this be any kind of connection that's meaningful, or is this just one of those things to make us point to and be like, oh, I see what they're doing
Hard to say. It could just be a fun thing, but our friends from the Listen 3000 pod, Caesar and Zen, had a theory that like the TVA is made up of like artifacts from different timelines of
there? Great
the
theory.
MCU. So like this is from the Cerebro room of a timeline, that has been pruned somewhere, and that's really fun. I think that's a really fun theory. I will be ecstatic if that comes to fruition. Um, and I mean, let's be honest. It seems like the most logical way to bring in this entire like species of like let's call them metahumans. This entire because they're this entire species that just like hasn't existed in the timeline before. It's we happen to be playing with this MacGuffin that can prune timelines at will, and that's actually a major plot point in this episode. So it makes a lot of sense that there would be something happen with the temporal loom or whatever explodes, and maybe the sacred timeline gets mixed with another timeline that has mutants involved. And obviously, the word mutants has been mentioned in our timeline, but it's not. We don't have the X-Men. The X-Men aren't a thing. We don't
No.
have Professor Xavier. Well, we do in Multiverse of Madness, but not in our you know realm or dimension, whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think that would be a fun and logical way to make it happen, and one where we're not like that was dumb. It didn't make any sense. Like I would, if that was the reason, I accept it because we've laid this 2 seasons of groundwork for how this like agency um, plays, and yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's a great theory by them. So shout out to Listen 3000 Pod.
Yeah, everybody make sure you subscribe to them, follow them on all the socials and stuff. Caesar and Zen, they do great work over there. We love them. I'm glad you actually mentioned to these alternate timelines, these different branches. We talked about this a little bit last week. I get very confused when we're talking about branches versus multiverses and all this stuff. Like is when Loki goes and when they go find Sylvie in at this McDonald's, is she in a different multiverse? Is she in the same universe, just a different timeline? Obviously, Professor X and the Illuminati are in a completely different universe, or is that like these kinds of things all confuse me? But to circle this back, I am glad you brought up the multiple timelines. I'm going to jump forward a little bit, kind of to the end of the episode, because the crux of this episode at the very end is that we're supposed to feel bad, like this. All these branches being pruned is supposed to be this really big event, and now I've heard people throughout the multiverse saga, I will keep referring to these bigger complaints that a lot of people have had, and it's this. A lot of people say, well, we're into this we're halfway through the multiverse saga, we're 3 years into it or whatever, and we're not really exploring these different universes. When in like Secret Wars, it's all these universes coming together and like, collapsing and doing all this stuff. Like, are we supposed to? They were definitely supposed to feel bad. Like at the end of this episode, when they're all huddled together and sadness reigns over everybody, I think they want us to feel that too. Like to feel for all these are all these innocent people that are being pruned, and now they're all dead, and this and that. I personally I was like, oh, that's like from the meme from the first season of Loki where he's like, yes, yes, very sad. Anyway, that's kind of how I feel when they're like going through this big thing and everybody's super sad about the timelines. What about you? Does this register with you? And do you agree that we're supposed to be feeling something in this moment?
I think you're a heartless, soulless piece of shit, to be honest with you.
Whoa, 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 whoa! We're
I'm
gonna
just
cut that
kidding.
out. We're gonna cut that out.
I'm totally kidding. No, I see what you're saying. Like Thanos snapping away half of life in the universe was a major deal for us because a lot of our favorite heroes got dusted in front
Right.
of our eyes. Like maybe there's planets that we don't know about that got obliterated, their population halved, but like we've never met any of them on screen, so we don't care. But the people that we have met, it was a very effective way to end a two-part, movie. But these timelines don't have the same stakes as that. So I get what you're saying. In theory, we feel bad because like the thought of these billions and billions and billions of people being pruned is like definitely a bummer. There's no denying that. But if you think about it, like just yesterday in this world, or maybe 2 days ago, like they just killed He Who Remains, and so there was only one timeline. So all of these timelines that had just been pruned are like very, very baby timelines. Of course, the people in these timelines don't know that, but like we, the audience, knows that these timelines they haven't been there the whole time. They're not the sacred
Very
timeline.
juvenile, yeah.
Yes, so it doesn't hit as hard as they probably wanted to. I'll agree, but I'm like, it's definitely a bummer to me. I like feel the sadness at the end.
Oh yeah, totally. Me too. I was just devastated. I was devastated right alongside.
I wasn't.
You know?
I do agree. I feel like you said, they want us to be devastated or like sad, and I was just like sad, not devastated.
Right. Yeah.
I like felt it a little bit, but not as hard as they probably wanted me to.
You know what actually made me feel, this is a great segue into our next point too, because what resonated the hardest with me is when Mobius and Loki are having this conversation, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you don't even." And I think X5 is giving it to him a little bit too, when he's like, "You haven't even looked. You don't even know what kind of life you have on the timeline." And then when he's talking to Loki about it, and Loki's like, "What if it's something great?" And then he says, "Well, if it's something bad, I can deal with that. But like, what if it is something great?" And I haven't even really thought about it from that perspective, but like, it makes sense, and you can see him. Like Owen Wilson does a great job in that scene because it really does feel like he's genuinely afraid, and also there's like this lingering sense where like he knows he's a coward for not looking, because it's like it's like the honest thing to do. Okay, when you find out you're a variant, your whole life's been pulled away from you. Well, I need to know what it was. But like for him, it's this comfort thing that it's like so easy for him to just continue to live his life as opposed to actually fight. I mean, the truth hurts. Like, and it's scary. Like, that's a scary thing to think about. And it's like, will he be able to go back to doing his job? Like, and that really resonated with me. And I agree with him. And like, I see why he's doing it, but I also really want him. And I think we are probably going to get some kind of resolution for that, like by the end of the season,
Definitely
I'm sure. Um, but
get
how,
that
so
motherfucker on
where
a
are you
jet ski.
stand? Right. Oh, I mean, he absolutely has to. Yeah. So where do you stand with that? Do you agree, like, and kind of see where he's coming from with that? And then, like, I don't know, how did that resonate with you as much as it did with me? Because it really hit for me.
No, it did, and like there's no doubt about it that to look and see that your life was good is undoubtedly worse than to be like, oh yeah, that shit sucked. I'm here now. Like that's the easy way out. But then seeing your Brad Wolf, star of Zaniac, which is a fun Easter egg by the way. Zaniac is a Marvel Comics character. Um,
Oh,
but to be a movie star is like, what the fuck am I doing at the TVA? You know, like I could be, you know, like schmoozing it up, like he is. Like we see him schmooze it up. Um, and to that point, there's an article on some website, I can't remember what it was, but maybe like Polygon or something. But they were like, his identity on the sacred timeline like should be Owen Wilson. And then like anytime they're in a present day setting and they're just like out in the world, like people are like Owen Wilson, you know, but he has to just be like, I'm
what?
Mobius, you know. And Tommy
That's
Listen House are
great.
just like,
Oh, I love
nah,
that.
understand. And that would be, yeah, that would be so funny. But I feel like the fact that we got an actor already makes that a little bit less likely. But no,
Yeah.
it definitely resonates. Um, but for me, I I wouldn't be personally in his shoes because I'm just too much of a curious cat. So like regardless of to me, I feel like not knowing would be worse than knowing and then
Agreed.
like sitting with the feelings. But I also say that and then could make that decision and then would have to just sit for the fucking rest of my existence, which is not 90 to 100 years. It is literally forever until for all time, always. Um, knowing that, you know, I could have been living the life of a movie star or a rock star or you know, my personal dream, the person in the world who helps the most people at once.
Right.
The most giving person in the world. The most selfless giving person in the world is my spot on the sacred
That
timeline.
would suit you. That would suit you very well as
I
the most
know.
generous person on the entire sacred timeline. You're just shining out like on the physical timeline out there. You're just like one big dot shining out. That's Garrett right there. That's the guy just making everybody's life brighter. That's him right there.
Just actually shisty as fuck though. On the inside.
We don't want to actually go spend an episode in your timeline because we don't want to see what you're really up to. We just
So
want to
true.
know. Well, just tell us, yeah, like, yeah, he's doing great stuff. That's good enough.
You
Yeah, we
can
don't
just
actually need to see
believe
the behind
when
the
I
scenes.
tell you I'm a great guy. Take my
Just
word
trust
for
me.
it.
Hey, just trust me.
Exactly.
It made me think too. We were talking about this actual physical timeline that we see, which I'm just fascinated by. It's in the trailers. I thought it was really cool to actually get to see this represented in this, and they're doing a great. I think with the visuals of it look great. It seems like I imagine that's probably where a lot of the VFX budget is going into with these actual timeline scenes and then being out there. But that's kind of
Better than
been
Secret Invasion.
OB. Yeah, that's kind of been OB's job so far this season is like fixing the timeline and getting everything back in order. And in this episode in particular, you know, he's working with Casey. We really have these two congruent storylines. He's working with Casey to try to fix the timeline and work on the temporal aura loom extractor device thing that even though I have no idea what that is or what it's going to do, like that doesn't bother me because I'm, you know, I know why they're working on it. It's important. But like we criticized this a little bit during Ahsoka and on some of our recent episodes of Ahsoka. These two storylines going on like near the end of Ahsoka. Spoilers for Ahsoka here. Fast forward 30 seconds or so if you haven't seen the last few episodes. But we get to these last few episodes and they had like they're on a different in a different galaxy on a new planet. This is super exciting. And then we go back to the New Republic in a courtroom, and it's like, oh, this is significantly less exciting. Now, we have two storylines here going on as well. And for me personally, like with completely different characters, now there's a little bit of overlap given that they're working in the same place and doing all. They kind of have similar goals and stuff. They need each other for a little bit, but for me personally, when we navigate away from one or the other, I'm not sad. Like I'm not like, oh. Now, I mean, anytime we leave OB, I'm just naturally like, I don't want to leave OB. I'd love it if he was just like a mainstay on the corner of the screen, just kind of narrating everything that was going on because he's been great this entire season so far. Like I love him, but when we've kind of bounced back and forth between storylines, I'm not bummed out or enjoying one less than the other. What about you?
No, I agree with you, and I think it has a lot to do with what both teams or sides, the missions that they have. They're both like, we're invested in both of them, right? We want to know what the fuck is going on with the temporal loom and how they're going to fix that, because that obviously has massive stakes for the MCU. But obviously, there's this dangling thread left from last season of Loki and Sylvie, where they're at in their relationship, what's going to happen now that she killed He Who Remains. There's like a lot of threads there, so we're definitely still interested in that. Um, Whereas, yeah, in Ahsoka, we were like, oh my god, what? Like, you guys are just causing your own downfall. It's boring. It's embarrassing. It's you know, no good performance could. It was
Like,
inevitable.
yeah,
That
yeah,
storyline was just simply more boring.
just, yeah, right.
So I think the answer to that is set up less boring storylines, which that could have been finished like so easily. The only reason it was left is because like the timing of it had to be at a certain point in time, and like so
Right.
they shot themselves in the foot with that. Anyways, I digress. Less Ahsoka, more Loki. The writing in Loki has been phenomenal. There's not a time when we're really like less invested in a storyline. And I think that has to do with the fact that they're both much much more intriguing than the Beep storyline of Ahsoka was.
I 100% agree, and I'm really interested to kind of see how they tie these up. Last point that I want to talk about before we get into a little bit of where we think this might be going for the last 4 episodes. We get significantly less action in this episode. Maybe not with just necessarily the fighting, but this episode is definitely more narrative driven than it is like than the first episode is just super fast paced, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. The entire time we get a little bit of action in the beginning, more when Loki is kind of detaining X5. And I thought that was really, really cool to see, like with the shadows and the magic and all this kind of stuff. Like, because that's like Loki has a really unique skill set that nobody else in the MCU, short of maybe Sylvie, because they're the same person, even though they love each other. I don't want to go over that too much, but Loki's the only one that can kind of do this stuff. So I'm glad they're taking advantage of it, and it's not just these like hand to hand fights there. And then we get a little bit of action too at the end when they're going there to stop the bombing, which it looks like they kind of stop it, but then we get back there and it seems like they didn't stop it, or they didn't stop all of it, or I was a little
Yeah,
bit
they
confused by
were
that. It
they were
seems
like
like,
too late.
oh,
So they
okay,
had
yeah,
already sent some of the bombs out through like the time doors and were bombing them,
okay,
and then by the time they got there, they had to fight the people off and then like destroy the bomb devices, and so like yeah, most of
right.
the timelines were destroyed.
Yeah, okay. So given that like we get a little bit less action in this episode, pretty much just kind of capping off the end, and then we get a little bit of it in the beginning. But I mean, this is like a 51-minute episode, I think, right over 50 minutes, and then we take out the Marvel the end credits and the recap and all that stuff. It's probably right around a 40-minute episode with the central 35 being all like narrative driven. Did that bother you? Did you feel like we could have used an action sequence in the middle or anything to kind of speed things up? Because I know you said you felt like there was a little bit of a dip in the second half. Do you think an action sequence would have helped that, or was it more narrative based issues for you?
Yeah, I don't know if it was the fact that it was less action based. I mean, obviously that is a stark difference in the front half and the back half of the episode, but I think like I don't know, the Loki Sylvie stuff was like kind of not doing it for me at the back half of it. Like it was a little bit um our lead TV editor Carly Lane at Collider, she is just so incredible. I just respect her so much. But she was talking about it today in our pitch meeting, and she said, um, it kind of felt a little bit like they were trying to walk the Loki Sylvie stuff back. And I agree with that in a sense. And it does feel like that is such a big like thing that you guys laid out there last season. Like you just go with it at this point. Like there's no walking it back. And it did feel a little bit like they were walking it back. So I hope that that's not the case. I hope that it's just, some rocks in the road and they get to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I think I don't mind the fact that it was narrative driven on the back half. I just think it wasn't the narrative that they had didn't do it for me as much as I wanted it to, or as much as the first half did. So I don't know if adding more action into it would have changed anything for me necessarily. It was still fun to watch, I think, throughout. There's some choices that I'm still pondering to see how they turn out before I can fully kind of make my decision on it.
Very well said. Yeah, that's a good point too. I didn't really interpret it like that in my initial watching, but now that I see it, or like now that you bring it up, and I'm kind of
when she said that, I was like, oh,
yeah, like that does kind of seem like what they were going for. And like for me, the biggest thing that I noticed with all the Loki Sylvie stuff is like Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson's chemistry, even so far, it's great in the first season, and then like they've built on it even more. It's incredible. Like it's
they turned it up a notch.
Yeah, it's as good as it gets. Like in terms of duos in the MCU that's going on now, like it's as good as it gets. And then it's like when we moved over to Loki and Sylvie, like, and I know, like, granted they're like on opposite sides. They're not supposed to be working together and feeling that, but still, I was like, I wasn't really feeling the weight of like this split with them. Like I wasn't like, oh my god, they like, because at the end of the last season, the season 1 finale, they go through this big argument and split. They completely like fundamentally disagree on what they're supposed to do. She kicks him through the portal and kills He Who Remains, and then it's like now they're on opposite sides, like they can't agree on anything. But I wasn't like really pull like in my head. I'm not sitting there watching like, come on guys, just get along, get on the same side. Like I wasn't resonating with that. Whereas if like something happened with Loki and Mobius, I'm like, God, no, y'all need to fix this now, because I do not. After watching you two just work together, even just through 2 episodes like this and seeing how great it is, like I don't want to see them split up. And I just wasn't feeling that, with Loki and Sylvie. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of. It almost felt to me like we're at the same place as we were in, like, I want to say it's like episode 3 or 4 of Loki season 1, where they go to like the big department store in Alabama in like 1950 or like 2000 whatever 2050 or whatever. There's like this big storm, and Sylvie has like the whole place rigged, and it's where like he like really decides to like follow Sylvie to like, and I think they go to like Lamentus after that or something. But it's kind of like a really big interaction for them, but it's like Sylvie, doesn't like Loki, and Loki's kind of still trying to like figure out what Sylvie's all about. And it feels like we're back at that stage of the relationship. So it feels like a regression, not like we fundamentally have different morals about this thing.
Right.
So maybe that's what it is for me. But I agree. I'm much more enthralled by, dare I say it, the bromance between Loki and
that's all the time
Mobius.
we have, folks. It's been a great
I mean, no Steve and Bucky. It's all about Loki and Mobius for me.
Oh man, yeah, that remains the biggest mistake that I ever made was calling that duo a bromance just to save characters. That was
you have to get X Unlimited now or whatever. You have to pay for Twitter now just so you can have extra character counts and you don't get into trouble with the fandoms.
Oh man, yeah, that whole entire platform. Now I can't imagine just the thought of giving that man what little money I do have, giving that man some of it is like, Just makes me want to vomit. But the last thing that I want to ask you about, Marvel and Star Wars too, and like Disney Plus in general, kind of has this format. Now it's not necessarily the same each time, obviously, because we've gotten some Marvel series that are 6 episodes, some that are 8, 9, and then the same with Star Wars, I think are generally 8. But like and or 12 and stuff. Anyway, I feel like Disney Plus kind of has this habit of forming these really, really definable mini arcs within a season. Like the first 2 episodes are an arc, and then the next 2, and then the last 2, or then like the first 3, and we build up to this mid-season finale, and then this crazy thing happens, and then we drop off. So, do you think that we're slated for something like that in Loki with this? Do you think this next episode is going to serve as this big event, and then we like this with this crazy ending that we'll kind of fall off of, or do you think we're going to kind of keep like a similar pace to how we're going now and like follow this through what we're chasing out to? Like, do you think by the end of this series that we're still going to be working with the temporal loom and this Loki Sylvie, uh, what's it called, like contradiction and all this kind of stuff, or do you think that's going to be resolved in the next episode or two, and then we're going to be moving on to bigger things?
I mean, I feel like you knowing the plot of the next 2 episodes and then asking me this question is a little bit uh underhanded, but I'll give it to you anyways. I don't know if I'm necessarily. I think I've noticed the arc thing more in Star Wars properties on Disney Plus more so than I have in Marvel. I think Marvel is more so kind of like Game of Thrones, where it was like every Game of Thrones season, like episode 9 was gonna just be an absolute fucking banger right before the season finale. Like episode 9 of every season, shit is about to go absolutely nutty. And so I feel like Marvel has more of a predictable, like episode 5 is going to have this reveal, episode 3 is going to have this reveal kind of structure,
Right.
rather than like an arc kind of thing. But in terms of is Loki season 2 going to adhere to the same X reveal on X episode thing? I'm not sure, but I do feel like a lot of this episode was setting up for next episode. So I regardless, I feel like the next episode is going to be a banger. And then I just, from what I've heard, it was tough to leave off on episode 4 for all these weeks. So I assume the next 2 episodes are going to be pretty good. So that's
Okay. Yeah, no, I like it. I wasn't trying to underhand you or do anything like that. I was just genuinely No, I was just genuinely curious for your question. No, that's or for your answer, man. That's all. That's all. I know I said last question, but this is just more like a yes or no. This is a yes or no. This is just completely crazy off the top, and because we talked about it a little bit earlier, be it post credit scene or not, and if this is the case, this would most definitely be like at the very end, probably a post credit scene. Will we see Deadpool in this series at all? Even if it is a post credit scene, yes or no? Will we see Deadpool? Not a mention, not a name, not Owen Wilson reading the name Wade Wilson off a TVA screen or something. I'm saying, do we see Ryan Reynolds or maybe somebody else in the suit? Will we see Deadpool? Yes or no?
I think I was having a little bit of trouble with that, and then you clarified we have to see Ryan Reynolds in the role, and I think that changes things drastically. And I think that the odds of that are significantly lower than getting a mention, which I think is definitely possible. So, do we see Ryan Reynolds? I'm going to go no, which is a safe bet.
Right.
Do we get a Deadpool reference? It's very possible because we know, like, yes, we know Matthew McFadden's going to be a TVA agent in Deadpool 3. That I believe is definitely confirmed.
Right.
I don't know if you remember this. There's like a Miss Minutes Twitter account. I don't think it's official, like not Marvel run, but it has a pretty big following and has interacted with Ryan Reynolds. They've interacted with each other like a couple times.
Oh yeah.
So like I know that the Deadpool, Miss Minutes, TVA triangle, there's something going on there 100%. I don't know what the content of the next 2 episodes is. But I know that Miss Minutes is up to some fucking shenanigans right now. She's a little rogue AI doing some rogue AI things, and almost never in the history of movies has that turned out to be a good thing. Almost. Almost.
Yeah, good save there. Yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I think because I was thinking about it today. Like we're gonna get Deadpool. They're planning on right now. I saw they recently said that they're planning to stick with Deadpool 3 in I believe May, or I think it's May of next year. And we're definitely not gonna have any that I can think of any TVA project between now, unless the TVA have some kind of role in the Marvels or Echo. I mean, I think that's like literally the only 2 projects we have once Loki season 2 ends.
I cannot imagine the TVA popping up in Echo. This grounded, gritty.
And next thing you know,
this fucking time door open. No, he's just in the background on a jet ski somewhere. Like, oh my
just
god,
changes everything we thought we knew about what Marvel shows are going to be. Oh. But I mean, it seems like given that the TVA are, supposedly, and I confirm or whatever it is, supposed to play such a huge part in Deadpool, it would seem really strange if this episode or if this season ends, and even if we don't see them, there's no mention of it. Like, or maybe they say at the end, like we're going to it, or I've got I'm gonna this just popped into my head. I've got a
toss
theory.
it out to me.
This is what's going to happen at the end because what they break Deadpool is all about breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that. So I can see at the very end of this season they're going to get the people in the TVA are going to get a call about 2 variants that they have to go prune, and somebody like Loki is going to say, "Well, do we have like a visual or do we have anything like that?" And the visual that we're going to get is either it's good. No, I know it's not gonna be either. It's gonna be that first initial still we got.
Set photo.
That set photo of the 2 of them like walking on that beach. It's gonna be those 2. That's gonna be the set photo, and then like that's gonna be a post-credit scene that's just gonna end right after that with them having to go to that timeline to prune or do whatever they're gonna do. That's my prediction for like a season or an episode 6 post-credit scene.
I want it to be the one where they're standing under the 20th Century Fox logo.
That needs to be the
still they use. But that'd be sick. I would be like, but also like, what a sick tease. That's gonna hurt. That's gonna be like hearing Blade in the Eternals post credit scene.
That's still so frustrating. Shout out to Blade. We didn't talk about Blade. One thing you and I were talking about is that we hope that Daredevil doesn't go down that same path. Like Blade deserves, and I don't think that just because they are doing this kind of redirection on it is any indication that that's going to happen at all. But I feel so bad for Blade, because Mahershala Ali is so ridiculously talented, and I just cannot hardly bear the thoughts of them wasting that talent. Like that's arguably the biggest talent that we've gotten in the MCU, like to headline a solo movie. So it's like, that's so incredibly frustrating to think that they can't get this on track. Like I know I'm not blaming anybody in particular. I think it's one of those kind of things where it's just been like one run of bad luck after the other. But I'm really hoping once we get these strikes resolved that they can get that movie back on track. But that's all I have for you guys. So I think let's do a little, what does TJ call it? The level 7 lockup. I believe you call it. I have not rehearsed my lockup, my closing out here, but we are going to just completely wing this. Garrett, I have had an absolute blast talking with you. Now I can see over an hour. I said before we went live, I was like, yeah, we'll just have a little quick chat, 30, 40 minutes, whatever. And then here we are. We've just been
I knew better.
Chatting about everything MCU related and all this stuff for an hour. It's been a great time. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure everybody, like I said at the beginning, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you're listening in podcast form, give us a 5-star review, give us a written review. Every single thing that you guys can do is just an immense help, and it's very, very much appreciated. We love you guys, everybody.
Go
Listening.
check
Thank you
out
guys
all
so
the other
much.
podcasts in the podcast network. Ticket to
Yep.
Reality,
Listen 3000.
Listen 3000,
The
Fandom
Critics.
Academy, The
Yep.
Critics, and
Cinema Sibs when the strike's over.
Cinema Sibs, and then Damon's Comic Corner on YouTube. I
Right.
believe The Critics is on YouTube as well.
Yep, it is.
So
good job.
yes,
good
go
shouts on
support
that.
the Agents of Fandom podcast network. It's great.
And the other, yeah, and all the other content on the Agents of Fandom on agentsofandom.com, the website too. Every single week we've got everything that anybody could ask for up there: reviews, news, Marvel, Star Wars, smaller movies, big budget. I mean, anything, whatever you're a fan of. If you just take a gander onto our website and enter it into the search bar, I guarantee you that we've got something for everybody in there. So,
and speaking about movies too, some big news came out of the pipe today that for the Agents of Fandom that we are going to have a representative at the Sundance Film Festival. So this will be our third film festival of the year. Will be the Toronto Film Festival, the New York Film Festival, now the Sundance Film Festival. So we're rounding up the circuit. We're gaining our street cred on the film festival circuit, and that's really exciting. So shout out to Ethan Simi, our film festival correspondent. You're gonna have a great time and cover some awesome movies for us and the site. So when that comes around, be sure to check out our coverage.
That, like you said, building up the street cred. Everybody buy up as much Agents of Fandom stock as you can right now, because it's getting ready to go to the moon. That's the only advice that I can give you guys. Get in. We're already past the ground floor, but we're on like maybe the 5th or 6th floor right now. There's still room in the elevator for plenty of people to get in, but like pretty soon, there's not going to be any room left, and you're just going to be watching from the outside of the building, being like, "Man, I wish I'd gotten in on those early levels." All right. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been a great show. Check out all of our other shows. Keep an eye out on the website, and we will see you guys next week back with more Loki. Thank you guys so much for listening. Peace.